This course is going to be about the harsh truth about relationships. Let's dive right into it. So this is a fact. The chance that you find your perfect person is actually very low. And if we think about it, it may be kind of disheartening. And I'm really not telling you to, stop searching for them. But really, I'm bringing this up because it means that you need to reevaluate your priorities and what stage of life you're at right now. Let me explain, right? If you don't have any savings and are only making money through your job, and you have to realize that you're kind of unstable, because if something happens to your only source of income, you'll be in a very bad situation, as in you probably won't be able to provide for yourself. You'll really struggle to just stay in a place and have enough food, et cetera, et cetera. So, and if you're in that situation, your primary goal should really be to have more savings so that you won't be totally screwed in case of things going wrong, right? Then once you have more financial security, you can then provide for someone else, and also, not maybe have to grind as hard 24/7. So you can also focus on them more. The truth of the matter is, when you're by yourself, you're able to do a lot more things. You're able to handle a lot more. And as a result, you're able to get a lot more things done. When you're with somebody else, a lot of times it is a big time sink. And that's completely fine. But you have to realize that is going to impact your performance. It's going to impact the level of success you're able to achieve. And as I point out later on, if you're young, you need to really make that decision very carefully, because you are in a situation where you do have once in a lifetime opportunity, and you want to make sure you maximize as much of that as possible. It is very difficult to go far successfully, but it's also extremely difficult to go far successfully and be in a relationship at the same time. I think the only couple I know that has done that is Alex Hormozy and his wife Layla, right? They met when they were, in the grind, right? And they worked on the business, but it takes a very, very unique kind of person. And in a sense, your other partner has to be very committed, very, very, understanding, and also be able to value you and understand long-term picture, right? All those things I just listed off are actually very rare in this world. So that's why I would encourage you to not think of this as the norm for everybody, but realize that that's actually an exception. So if that's an exception, that just means that most of us are not going to be able to achieve most of our success and be in a relationship at the same time. We're going to have to, in a sense, choose one or the other to some degree. It doesn't mean you can't be successful at all, but the level of success that you achieve may be greatly reduced if you're also in a relationship at the same time, because of the energy and time sink. This is a very generalized statement, and if you have someone that you do find who is a gem, that'd be amazing, right? But most of us won't really find that person, because just statistically, there's not that many out there, and it's kind of unlikely you would find them. Becoming successful also takes a lot out of you, and this prevents you from being there for the other person all the time. And that's, I think, a big reason why a lot of relationships end too, is because unless they have this huge foresight of seeing that, this person really has, a lot of the right things that I want in a person, and I'm willing to stick with them until they reach that success point, that's, if they're not like that, then they're just going to be like, this person's not really spending time with me, et cetera, and then it's fine. It just may not be the right time, right? You need to focus on what you need to focus on, and maybe they need to focus on what they need to focus on, right? Additionally, being able to focus entirely on one of the very difficult tasks of being successful is hard enough already without adding in additional complicating factors. I've already talked countless times, and even if you're just alone trying to become successful, it's so difficult. And so if you add in this kind of additional thing, right? Additional relationship that, takes a lot of your focus, your time, your energy, your emotions, all of these things, it's going to really decrease. The fact of the matter is going to decrease your chance of success. And some people, that's fine, right? That's totally fine. But then you have to realize that, unless you become bound to this person, there is a chance that this person will leave you, or you will leave them. And as a result, in a sense, I want to put this very carefully, the time that you invest in this person may or may not pay off. And it is hard to tell, and you can only tell with time. But if you invest a significant amount of time into them and it does not pay off in the sense that it does not actually work out in the end, you could have potentially invested that time into becoming more successful and improving yourself more. And depending on your stage of life, you may have made the wrong decision. Let's dive into this a little bit more, right? So just looking at many successful people in general, there's a very common trend in that they're not searching excessively for the one, right, for the relationship, because they realize that if they focus their energy, they can build something truly amazing of themselves, which is true for anybody. If you focus your energy and you actually really try and you really work hard on just like a one or two things, right, you will be able to become very successful. But the problem becomes if you try to do all these things and you add in a relationship and it just comes like a lot of complication stuff, all these things, and it starts distracting you. It takes more of your energy, your time. Now you're not putting in your best work at what you're trying to do to become successful. It just makes things much more complicated, much more difficult, and the chance of you succeeding is much less. Again, this is a very generalized statement, and there could be people that prove this wrong, but for the majority of us, this is what's going to probably happen. By also becoming successful, I want to point out, or at least more financially secure, you open up your options too, because you're able to provide for others, which allows you to have more optionality. If you don't have enough money to comfortably live, it will be harder to convince others that you have what it takes to support them as well to some extent, right? It's like if you're already struggling just by yourself, then it's like, how are someone else supposed to be with you and also, just be like, okay, right? I think a good rule of thumb is like you need to have enough for yourself and also somebody else. And that way, when things happen, you don't have these huge stress events where you're always constantly worried about, if you have enough money, if you have all these things, because that's going to put a lot of emotional strain on the relationship going forward, right? Because the fact of the matter is everybody needs money to live, right? And that's not something we're not idolizing money, but we're pointing out just a fact of human nature. And that if you simply just do not have savings and do not have money, you have a very different life. And that can cause a lot of problems and a lot of strain on relationships because you can be in very precarious situations. So here's my advice, right? If you're young, you'll only be this age once, right? And I would honestly say if you're in a 15 to 30, maybe even 35, you have peak energy that you will never get again. So I would really caution you guys to be very careful with excessively spending your time and energy searching for someone. Because the truth is, you may not find that person, and your choices of not grinding as much as possible now will likely impact you in the future down the road. The probability that you find the one you will settle down with is extremely low, and this makes it less of a priority at this moment. And your career and financial stability for your future should be the priority because you're very young. And when you're young, you have a lot of energy, and we want to put that energy towards something that is going to guaranteed help you, guaranteed make your life more secure in the future. Right? Of course, right, you need to have experience. You need to be able to understand, like, there's a very big difference between not talking to anybody ever and, talking to everybody all at once. So you, of course, don't want to be on either ends of the spectrum, but you have to decide where you are along that. I would just want to say this is your one shot at making something of yourself. And if you double down and focus your energy, you can really actually achieve a lot. I also want to point out that each relationship is very different and there's no such thing as one size fits all, right? Being successful and being in a good relationship is not mutually exclusive. That's another thing I want to really point out. But the chance that you find someone that is a true fit while you are also aggressively chasing success is so low to the point that you should just focus wholeheartedly on chasing success. Another thing I want to point out is that the pool of available people for relationships is very large. Like very, very large. And for the most part, unchanging. There are nearly infinite people available, especially now with social media and different, ways to like kind of meet other people. And there will continue to be infinite people available. So in most situations, you're not missing out, quote unquote, on anything. And I want you to really realize that your energy levels and focus decrease by the year. So please make the right choice. Here's kind of the nightmare scenario. This is, I guess, in my mind, what the worst case scenario would be and what I don't want you guys to experience. And this is why I'm making this kind of video course to just kind of share my insights in that, right? So let's imagine this person, right? You spend your youth chasing after what you think is the one for you, time and time again. This severely distracts you and prevents you from achieving success since you never work that hard on improving yourself. Now you're older and in a job where you don't have many options anymore and don't make that much to comfortably live. Because you're older, you don't have time to change your career or choose another path anymore. You're really locked in. And that's something I think not enough people realize is when you're young, you have a lot of optionality because you have the power of time. If something doesn't work out, you can try something else. You also have a lot of energy to make up for that. When you're older, now all of a sudden you don't have that like optionality anymore, and you start to actually kind of be locked in. And so you want to make sure you make the right decision when you're younger, so that when you're older, you do have choices and you do have enough support and enough financial stability to be able to do the things you want. Because otherwise, you're going to be like this person here who doesn't have time to change their career or choose another path. And now not many people want to be with you because you can barely support yourself, and it limits your options, causing you to settle for much less. If only you could redo it. So I really want you to just think about this example. And of course, like this might be in a slight exaggeration, but in some cases it's really not though. And I want you to just think about your personal reactions to it and what do you think you would do differently in this situation? Unfortunately, it's about money, kinda. As a clear-minded person, right, I want to pose a question to you. If you had two similar people, we're just saying they're like, for the most part, pretty similar, no major issues. One who could comfortably support you and one who is struggling to make ends meet, who would you choose? Just think about that. It's not about the money. It's about the security and comfort that having money can bring, and this extends into a relationship, which is why if you have very limited amounts of money to the point you can barely support yourself, then attracting someone else is almost out of the question. Do you think other people are going to act completely against their rational minds, right? You need to build and improve yourself first to attract the person you want. This is also another fundamental truth. You can't expect to want an amazing person when you yourself are nowhere near that. So you have to build yourself up first to get to that level, so that way you can kind of, attract other people. Imagine the person you want is out there, but they are above your level. You will only meet them when the time is right and when you have sufficiently grown and matured. Focus on growing yourself first, then the rest will follow. Instead of chasing butterflies, spend time building a garden that attracts all the butterflies. This is really a metaphor for life, right? Instead of chasing after people all the time, focus on building yourself up and improving yourself to the point that you attract other people. The art of the deal. At the end of the day, relationships are like a deal. If you offer enough desirable qualities that the other person likes, and you have fewer undesirable qualities, and I want to point out this can be part of your personality too, not just like your financial situation, and vice versa with other persons. So if you also see in them more desirable than undesirable qualities, right? Typically, you two can commit to making things work out because you realize that they have more things that you want than you don't want. Just like no one sells their computer, right? Like I wouldn't sell this laptop for $20. You also can't expect extremely high value people to want those who are not as mature or personally developed as themselves. You can't expect somebody who is very, very high up on the, kind of ladder or something like that, or even just like very well matured, all this stuff, to want somebody who is much, much lower down. And so if you happen to be in that position where you're much lower down, and we're talking like, let's say just maturity wise, or if you're like not financially stable at all, like all those things, you need to work on that first because you're not going to attract any high value people. It also depends on what each side values more. If somebody values financial security more, they may be okay with less good personality. Or if somebody values trust more, they may be okay with less stable finances. This is why, again, every relationship is very different. But here's the bottom line, okay? There will always be other people to chase for relationships, but you won't always have the opportunities you have now in front of you. Think carefully and make the best decision for yourself. That's it for this course. If you have any questions, put in the comments below. Otherwise, subscribe for more.